What is up, everyone? Today we have a blower here that came in a group of two identical to this one. We did a tune-up, works great. Another one, tune-up, works great. This one, however, does not work great. It is having a real hard time pulling. It has a lot of compression. That's normal. However, what's not normal about it is it's almost too much. Like, it almost snaps the cord out of your hand. So if you're having that problem, we're gonna have to work on most likely the valves. Hopefully that's the only problem. These do have a tendency of having other problems that are causing this issue, but let's go ahead and at least give the valves a try. Very first thing you do is remove this cover. I've already done this. And on here, you're gonna remove the valve cover. At that point, you're going to be able to see the valve. Like I said, spark plug is disconnected. And you're going to want to pull it over. Technically, you're supposed to do it on top dead center. I don't like doing that because it kind of gives you a little bit too much room for air. This valve is fully compressing. This rocker is fully compressing the valve. So this one should be a little loose. It kind of is. It's not bad. Could be a little tight though, but what we're looking for is more of a loose instead of a tight situation. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get a set of feeler gauges. Now this is the problem with this machine. Stihl in their infinite wisdom decided to make a special type of valve in a way. It's not really special, but you need a special feeler gauge, and you can buy it. It's not too expensive. The problem is, generally if you need it, it's going to take a lot longer for you to get it I can't talk. It's going to take a lot longer for you to get it, so you're going to be down. So what I did is I went out and I bought a set of thin feeler gauges, and I modified the one I need. It's 4/1000, which is 0.10 of a millimeter, and I just cut off the end so it's going to be able to fit, and we're going to be able to use it. Now what does that even mean? Why am I doing that? Well, let's find out. See right here how there's like these little arms on the side of the rocker to kind of keep it from going back and forth? You have to be able to fit the feeler gauge on top of the valve stem in between the rocker, and those little arms is going to make it very difficult. So that's why you need a thinner gauge. You can buy it, like I said, don't worry, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove that in there, and it needs to be to the point where it's not super loose, like almost to the point where if you were to let go of like the pack, it would slowly start to come out and eventually fall. That could be a little bit too tight, so you're going to want to loosen it just a little bit. But if it's so loose where it just falls out immediately, that's too loose. You need to have a little bit of drag. It's really a feel type thing, but just know it should be a little bit of drag. But if you really have to force it in there, especially with a 4 thou, and it just starts bending, it's too tight. Don't even bother loosening it up. Now, how do you loosen? Take an 8 millimeter or a 5/16 and loosen this nut. That's going to allow for more of an adjustment, and that's it. So I'm going to adjust this and see if that fixes our problem. You're going to want to do both sides, and I'll explain why you need to do both sides and what's causing this problem after I get done adjusting them. But it's the exact same process for both sides. Once I'm done with this side, I pull the pull cord. This valve is fully compressed. This one should have slack and play. If it doesn't, well, we know why. I'm hoping this one actually has quite a bit of slack and play, but we'll find that out here shortly. Okay, as you can tell, things escalated quickly. So it's not as bad as it looks. There's just screws on the side. The whole cover comes off. You do have to remove it from the base. There's 3 screws on the back, 1 screw on the bottom with these little springs. Not that bad. But there's one key component that's missing. I tried pulling on it, and the fan just kept on spinning and spinning and spinning. Now, this happened quite often, and look, I don't know if you can tell, but there's cracks in there. this is probably a bad fan. So one way you can test if what your problem is, if we crank this down, but if we crank it down to the point where it's super tight, but it's not making contact with this white base, and we pull on it and it runs fine, it is a bad fan. You do not, however, want to actually leave it that way, because this, over time, will just break. I mean, you could, I guess, if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. The cracks will just keep going through. I wouldn't even weld it. You'll just ruin the metal or the plastic around it. It's pretty much trash. There's a part number right there. It is for 4283-700-3401A. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to crank it down. I'm going to pull on it, give it a test, because the valves didn't work. Unfortunately, they were okay. So let me explain. I didn't actually do that yet. Because this is a valved engine, there's going to be a point when it comes to right about top dead center, but it's going to have a little bit of a pimple on the cam. Let's call it that. It's not, but let's just call it that. It's a little bump on the cam that goes away eventually. But that little bump will bump one of the valves open a little bit to release some of the compression. Now, that should happen, and it is happening. Something else that can also happen is this is not light. It could need the weight of the fan to kind of help guide it through the motions. I also doubt that one, but just in case, we're going to give this a try and we'll see how it works. So I'm going to put it back together, put the fan on, go from there. Okay, right now I move, the crank moves, so you know, technically it's connected now. When I pulled on it, I just heard as in the fan spinning, and then just continued to spin because it was broken and loose. But what I don't hear is I don't hear any rubbing, which is important. So I'm going to go ahead and get it completed, and hopefully we just have to replace a fan. All but one bolt is in place. There's just the one that's on the bottom, but to be honest, I got tired of installing stuff. So let us go ahead and pull. I realized I didn't show you what was happening before, but basically when I got to the compression stroke, it was just really hard. And even with me stepping on it, the machine was I was pretty much lifting the machine off my foot. It was bad. That's a bad thing. Don't even try to start it. If that happens, you're going to hurt yourself and maybe even the machine. But let's see. The fan is cranked on. You saw that. We're going to put this on choke and give us a little bit more working room here. We'll give it a tiny little pull first. Oh yeah, that's way better already. Oh yeah. There we go. As you can tell, it runs. So, and more importantly, it doesn't have that issue. So, we are at a crossroads. Do we simply let it continue and let it roll? If this is your personal machine, you can make that determination. This is owned by a professional, and my determination at that point is we're replacing that fan. It's not that hard, it's not that expensive. You can get some off eBay. Granted, you run the risk of it also having that problem. But as we saw before, like quite literally, when I got to like that point, I was having to pull on it so hard. And when I adjusted the valves, the exact same thing was happening. It was not releasing the compression whatsoever. Well, it was. But it needs that fan. It needs the fan to kind of go through its little cycle. And without that, you're going to have problems. So, I'm going to get this ordered. If you want to see the installation, I might record it. It's pretty much what you just saw. Like I said, there's just bolts all around the side. The ones that are 3 in the back, 1 in the bottom, and just take it apart. Have a little extra room around. Don't have things hanging because that tube will want to fly everywhere. You can remove the tube, but you're going to have to remove the handle from the tube because the kill wire, the throttle wire, all those wires are going to be connected to the carb and the machine. So there's going to be quite a bit of rustling around, but you'll be able to do it. I'm going to leave you at that. Follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If you like what you see, keep watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're having this problem, but this is not to help you, let me know. I do have other ideas on what it could be. Unfortunately, it's going to be expensive. So this is the best case scenario, or the valves. The second best case scenario is going to be the fan. And the last scenario is going to be pretty much a new motor. That's bad. At that point, just buy a new one. But I'm going to leave you at that. Have a good night. And don't forget to subscribe. Put a thumbs up. That helps me a lot. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good night.